That's a new music, no?
That's good music. Welcome to the MUN. We're Jonas and Alex from MUN, where we make MUN conferences accessible to delegates and easy to host for organizers. Today, we are joined by Egan Paquay, a good friend and seasoned MUNer who will share his insights and lovely stories from Model United Nations with us. Egan, welcome to the MUN.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Sweet. Jonas, welcome again as well. It's been a while since we did this podcast.
Yeah, I remember back when we did that last time, we always said which episode that was, but I would have a really hard time reciting which one we're on. Should be around 15-ish?
Roughly. But it's a new era. We've taken a break for a few months, and we've done a lot of work. We've relaunched the MUN frontend. We've developed the native apps for MUN Command. But I think it's time to come back. And what better way to do it than to do it with Egan, who we've been to a bunch of conferences with and who's just come back from Rome, and who just applied to Tel Aviv MUN as well. Keeping busy, Egan. How was it in Rome?
It was interesting, yeah. I mean, the Eternal City, you know. So there's always a good reason to go back there, or to go there for the first time, honestly. It was also a nice trip back memory lane for me. Because Rome was the last conference I attended before the pandemic hit. So it was quite interesting to just realize, wow, 3 years have gone by. And it was also a nice way for me to just look back, okay, MUN-wise, from 2020 to here, what has changed? And, you know, how have I developed as an MUNer, but also as a person?
It's true, Egan, you have done an... Yeah, Jonas, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was about to say this is one of the particular things we should highlight about Egan's MUN career. Egan has done MUN before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and is continuing to do them after the pandemic. And I think there's very few people who can say that, which is why I'm particularly, happy to have you on the show today.
Yeah,
I
Egan.
mean, Go ahead. Sorry.
We've got to get in the groove here again, haven't we? Don't we?
It's the what happens whenever you have a podcast. I guess
the rust has to
Alex,
come off. No, but so Egan, is there a difference you see now in MUN versus what it was like, let's say 3-4 years ago?
Definitely. I'd say, you know, if you check before the pandemic, you know, the kind of status quo you had, we swore by just in-person debating and in-person conferences, and also I wouldn't say the technology was as far as we've gone now in a couple of years. I mean, I remember when the only way to have motions and have speeches and so on was very much with timer on your phone, and then just pen and paper when it came to making motions and resolutions and so on. So we've gone a long way. That's
are you hinting at MUN Command a little bit?
Well, they have definitely spearheaded the effort of just changing how we do it.
I think what we have to add as well is saying that, Egan, you were the Secretary General of St. Gallen MUN back in 2020 in November, so the pandemic was in full
21.
swing and you organized 21, yes, apologies for that. And so the pandemic was in full swing, and you were the first conference to use the MUN Command Conference App to, we had never ever had anyone use it before. And so I think that was a remarkably bold kind of act of showing that trust to us and to innovate the format. And so this is one thing that I would love to speak about more today as well, is kind of what you were hoping to get out of it back then, and how that whole thing, has gone from back when it started together, but also where you see it now when you go to conferences nowadays, quote unquote, after the pandemic.
You're referring to 2020 then? Yeah. In 2021, I was Secretary General, but in 2020, I was in charge of academics.
Right.
So, and yeah, 2020 was very much the height of the pandemic, also in terms of conferences and so on. And basically, the way it went, I was thinking about it earlier, was that I was just looking around the internet very much for ways in which you can actually have an online conference and make it a nice and enjoyable thing. And so we were first thinking about, okay, so where will people meet in the first place? Are we just sticking to Zoom because we have a license for it? Or do we actually go for something else, something a bit outside of the box? So we went with Gatherly, which for all its flaws was still an interesting concept to have, and they have since then improved. And the same can very much be said about the debating software that we had. It had some flaws, and in a sense, we realized, maybe we'll do the pen and paper thing just for this thing, and then we'll go straight back into the debating software and so on. But we realized that using MUN Command, the embryo, the very first prototype of it, was definitely a very nice way for us to realize that, hey, those things can be developed, and there's a very undertaking team behind it, and that's what you want to see, I guess. And it was just nice for us to take that gamble and for it to pay off so well, and also beyond SGMUN.
I mean, it's easy to now have you talk about all the nice things about MUN Command, because obviously this is our podcast and we kind of love our embryo at this point. But do you want to talk about some of the rough edges maybe as well, that like back when you guys started using it, we were like, oh God, what have we gotten into here?
I mean, I'd say your greatest nemesis was very much the Control plus R, the refresh. An easy fix always, but unless you know that it's a problem, people are not going to actually go ahead and refresh.
Yeah.
So you have to tell the chairs and so on, guys, by the way, refresh. Or whatever.
If it doesn't work, refresh.
And the problem is, it's not only this, it was also the combination with the other apps or something. So you would refresh one of the things, and then they refresh the wrong thing, they refresh Gatherly, and then they're just out of their meeting, out of their call. So they have to get back in. And then they can't actually be in a group, they have to broadcast to the entire floor, and then they have to broadcast, because back then it was just a session app. So people were not actually on the software itself.
I think we were using the conference app, no?
In 2020, I don't think that was the case. I think it was only sessions at that point.
No, I think you were in 2020. You were the first to use the conference app.
Was it the first?
Yeah.
Could be.
I think so.
Could be.
You were the first conference to use the conference app, so delegates, in theory, were on it as well.
Yeah. Well, that's also a main problem usually. It's that delegates would not really get onto the thing until the last point. But then again, that's not a flaw of the app. It's just a flaw of people getting the mail in their spam and therefore never using the app. And so, the chairs always have to navigate around that.
No, it was a lot of learning experiences from that for us from that as well, because I think we rebuilt the way people log in, so it's easier for people to do that. Like just that first thing, that what you just described with people just getting on it, and it's super easy now. Yeah. We've even made it easier now again by people being able to put everything into a form on the first page, so it's even quicker. And the reloading thing, obviously, because MUN Command, the conference app, everything is synchronized. So whenever you click on a play timer button as a chair, on every device, on every delegate's device, it has to realize that time has stopped and stop it as well. So that was really difficult for us to build in the beginning, but over the last 2 years, we were really able to put a lot of updates into it, and it's so fun to see it now, where it's a lot smoother, thankfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say the less smooth aspects of it are not necessarily even in the debating part of it, but rather the organizational part with you taking back my MUN. That's also a big project. I remember our USG of Finance wishing my MUN's death at some point. To be honest, he was very much in a rage at that point. But I do understand the concerns in certain ways that still need to be addressed. For the finances, a lot of stuff that's not necessarily still 100% accurate. It's quite hard to do the whole accounting bit.
Yeah, for sure. About like that 2020, end of 2020 as well, that was before we actually had taken over MUN, right? Yeah. So, and making
I'm
MUN
talking
a lot
about
more
the more
simpler.
recent stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Making it more simpler to use was really on the our most pressing issue that we wanted to address.
Mm-hmm.
Jonas, are you still there with us?
Yeah, I'm fully there. Yes, I have to say that
he gets in there, he goes out,
cold. and so it makes that upset me a little bit.
It's the revolving door of the podcast. He comes and goes as he wants.
No, absolutely.
Nice. Jonas, how do you remember those days when it was super exciting, I remember, for us when they used the conference app for the first time?
Oh, yes, I remember. We were in the co-working space where we used to always, sit down and code, and then we received Egan's message that, they were committed to using the conference app for the first time. We were celebrating like crazy. It was the biggest thing we could imagine, is that, finally there's a conference that, has the trust in what we do. And when
crazy enough.
Yeah, it totally seems so. And during the conference, I want to say that many conferences that use both Gatherly and MUN Command, they said, MUN Command was really not the problem during our conference. And we were a little bit surprised, because everything we saw, we were not satisfied with how things were. And so based on all of this, based on the feedback, based on what we saw, we've done massive leaps, I think, ever since, which by no means that we're, at the point where we're, 100% satisfied. If so, I think we'd have nothing left to do. But I think you mentioned the logging into the app. One thing that we've planned for this year there, which is super exciting, is to integrate MIME and MUN Command in a very, long future. Let's see how long it's going to take us, but I'm dreaming of, people being able to log into MUN Command with their MIME account, and so thereby reducing the kind of friction in the whole registration process for MUN Command. And those things, I think, could really, benefit. We're just launching right now, kind of like setting up MUN Command with an export from MIME, so it's no longer having to format some Excel spreadsheets, but it's just one export, one import, you're done. And then building on that step by step, and this is super exciting plans, I think, for this year.
For sure. Now, we obviously don't want to make this whole thing a product promo. That was not the point of it, especially not of having Egan on. But it's so easy to latch on to those memories from when we tried to launch the product as what we called an alpha still, or an embryo, as Egan, you like to call it. Now, Egan, you are one of the people who I know who has done the most MUN conferences. And what I think is so remarkable about you is that you, at CAMUN last year, so November 2022, you still were there as a delegate.
Yeah.
How do you still have the fire?
That's a good question. It's probably because I still wanted to go to the conference, but
right.
Back when chair applications were open, I had no idea whether I could go or not.
Okay.
Especially, you want to be part of that fun, but you don't know yet if you can be there as a chair. So you do the next best thing. And yes, for some committees, especially with the amount of conferences you might be doing over 5 years or something, you might be a bit overqualified, which is unfair to some. But at the same time, I mean, you're still having some fun because it's the people that you've come to appreciate over the years and so on. And more than an MUN conference, it kind of becomes just a family reunion very much. Like the whole squad is there,
Especially in November, you go to a conference and so many familiar faces you see at one point. And this is, as you said yourself, it's almost feels like, coming home to family, almost. Which by no means should, scare away any first timers and newcomers. It's easy to become part of that family. But it definitely does give always a very warm reception, I feel.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an open circle, and if you show the intent that you want to do it more often, you do it as a hobby, it's something that you like, then it's funny, but I'd even say that MUN as a concept is almost secondary to the fun that you have with just hanging around people, and MUN conferences kind of become the excuse to get back together. So these conferences do pile up, and you don't even realize it. But it's just but that's a conference where I'll be chairing with that person, so that's a unique combination. Or that's a conference where I'll be a delegate in the same committee as that person. And these shared memories, you're always in a permanent search for these kind of special connections that you'd have with individuals and create.
Now I'm curious, again,
that's what it's all about.
You did loads of conferences, and so I'm curious when you look at yourself, kind of before you set your foot into the first MUN conference, and when you look at yourself now, kind of which development have you seen, and also what part of that can be attributed to MUN? Because during our studies, we all develop naturally, so it would be a bit exaggerated to attribute the full development to MUN. But what's your stance on that? What can people take away from MUN?
Well, I definitely first say that MUN is in its essence a role-playing game, you know, and in that sense you learn to act. You learn to basically live action role play as someone, and that does entail a lot of I don't know, just it develops your charisma, or if you don't necessarily have the charisma yet, those are very good situations in which you can just develop it and try out.
Yeah.
So public speaking as a whole, I think your English also massively improves. I think I started in 2017. And my only source of English back then was watching WWE wrestling. Since then, basically, all of my vocabulary has come from MUN and things MUN related. And also just the development of just making those connections, making these, like creating these friendships and so on. And I'd say most of it is more on the social skills department.
I would have so loved to see.
Do you reckon? So have you actually ever?
English. Oh, sorry, Alex.
Sorry?
I was just saying.
Go ahead, Jonas.
I was just saying I would have loved to see little Egan, who knew all his English from wrestling, and now he's in an MUN conference. That must have been hilarious.
Yeah, the first opening speech. Oh my God! From the top rope! Oh my God! Probably. I don't remember.
Oh, you put the fear of God into your fellow delegates by essentially doing wrestling commentary as MUN.
John Cena! He's coming to the ring! He has a steel chair! Yeah.
Is that covered by Chapter 7 of the UN Charter or not?
It's definitely a war of aggression. So.
Oh God! Have you actually, Egan? Have you ever been part of like a really large committee, like at WorldMon, for example? You have those like 200, 300, 400 people committees.
I've as part of a course at the University of St. Gallen, I've done the National Model United Nations in New York.
Yeah.
I did it online, and irony of all, we did it through Gatherly.
How did that go?
It's the bigger committees, I think we were like about 150, 200 in our committee.
Okay.
The UN Industrial Development Organization. I was Kuwait with a fellow delegate. And yeah, it's Kuwait has like 0.9% of its whole economy is based on agriculture, and we had agricultural subjects. So a lot of, as we would say in German, rund um den Brei. Basically, we would just it's a lot of just a back and forth and just saying yes to one another and just not really offending anyone. And when every country does that, you come at a crossroads where you ask yourself, is this the real UN, or are people just not wanting to offend anyone? And it's still to me a bit intriguing how that goes. We got Best Delegate, and that's not because we did a good job or anything. It's because the Best Delegate award is given on a peer basis, on a peer feedback basis. Oh. So the peers elect the Best Delegate. And honestly, we've manipulated them.
How did you do that?
We went all out by just being nice and just overtly kind of fake nice. Just, oh, thanks for your contribution. We'll make sure to add your name to the list of signatories. and that whole thing, and you just buy their votes, and that might be the real you win. I don't know. I hope not.
No, I think there you don't do it with like being nice, but with money.
Then it's all good then. Then there's an actual incentive. It's not just fake generosity, it's actual cold hard cash.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Do you reckon though? Okay, so this is actually an interesting, because like Best Delegate Award, it's like a hotly debated thing, and I feel I know I've been on that I've been that person who's been slightly offended by how a Best Delegate was or wasn't chosen. What do you reckon? Is that maybe a good system that people are just sort of elected by committee who is the best delegate?
Well, like I said, the award of best delegate can always be a poor decision if the person who makes that decision is not necessarily guided by the best principles or ideas. If it's a chair and you'd often have, like, the number one thing where you would reject someone in a chair interview is, oh, well, I think the best delegate award should go to the person who speaks the most. Because that really is the case. In fact, if you check MUN Command statistics, the best delegate is usually the second biggest speaker. That's
that would be a fun statistic if we could actually have like good data on that. Like, who of those on the list is usually best delegate?
But I was very often like the second most to speak, and I would get the award because the person who spoke more than me usually spoke a bit too much.
Okay.
Yeah, but So the chair might be misguided in how they award the best delegate, and the delegates might as well be just as misguided. I mean, if you give the best delegate just to the person who has been, I guess the good thing is that best delegate, if it's peer feedback, peer award, is more of a diplomatic award, because at least the fellow delegates and so understand who was the person who reached out the most to the other aisle. So there's that at least. But whether that's the best delegate in and of itself it's too qualitative for the delegates to just extrapolate.
It boils down to the question of like, what is a good delegate to begin with?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there are many different interpretations. No, there are many good interpretations for that. But for me, it would be someone who is just a very good person to debate with, a person who brings ideas to the table, a person who actually acts upon these ideas and actually works on something, and is a leading force behind that effort. And also, it isn't necessarily a factor when it comes to debate, but usually the best delegates are also people that I was able to hang out with at the socials afterwards, who also have some more redeeming qualities than just the debate. That to me is a complete delegate, at least.
I think, especially in those large committees, I think it's even harder to choose a best delegate. Jonas, I know you've chaired some really large committees. How did you manage that, just to not just pick that one person that maybe spoke the most, so 2 or 3 times in a big committee?
Well, I found especially the larger the committees are, the harder it is. It was at one of those large committees that for me the idea for MUN Command came when I was in New York chairing a huge committee. And frankly, when every time I'm like in a big committee and there's no MUN Command, I'm like, this software was made for that. Because it just gives a lot more kind of equity to everyone to participate more equally. And so you have people also from last rows kind of, have a larger chance to participate. And so I think what's always, misleading is that you see people in the first couple of rows and it's easy to pick those as a chair, when in reality you should, as a fact, you want to reach out kind of beyond the first row of raised placards. Then when it comes to, award decisions, for me, yes, of course, there are the kind of hard facts and figures of like, speaking time and stuff. But for me, what matters even more, I think, is if people have kind of like an idea about like where they want the debate to go, and they kind of lead and steer a committee as a whole, largely through things like motions that they introduce and that get passed, which to me make a huge difference. Getting the majorities that they have leading a block and forming alliances, but also not just kind of cold-heartedly, shutting the gates, but also reaching out to others, kind of enabling others to speak up, to integrate. And then one thing that I always love seeing is when people, they come in the first day, they're very shy, they barely want to, go up front, speak. And on the last day, they stand there and they defend a resolution or amendment or whatever it is. Those to me are really the top-notch delegates, simply because of this immense trajectory that they have. If there's this wonderful delegate who speaks like a young Shakespeare, that's impressive, yeah. But I love seeing that development as well a lot, because it really shows how people kind of step out of their comfort zone in a lot, of senses. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how you've seen it, Alex, in New York, but from New York and Rome a couple of weeks ago, what I realized was the best delegates and so on were also delegates who made my job as the chair easier.
Yeah.
Those who are very much kind of sometimes also understand what the chair means or what they're trying to do or accomplish, and just someone who's an enabler, a facilitator.
For sure.
You want someone like that in your committee, just so you can sometimes take a back seat and know, hey, the delegates will figure it out. I just need my rest here. I've only slept like 3 hours, please.
And then probably less.
No, even probably less. Yeah.
No, it's fair. I think one of my chairs once shared with me sort of a philosophy or a secretary general when I was chairing, and they were like, so just think about your committee and pick the person who you think if you take them out of the committee, it all falls apart. So that one guy that holds the house of cards together to make sure sort of there is a resolution and things are coming together. And I think that's kind of what you're going towards there as well, Egan. And I think, so in New York, I tried to really also take into account sort of properly the contribution to the written document at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Because this is the hardest thing to measure, I feel, or like the hardest thing to get a sense of as a chair as well, because not even the main submitter is necessarily a good representation of who actually wrote the damn thing, because maybe that's just the guy who is most vocal in the group and somebody else wrote it entirely. And like even apart from that, you could think in an ideal world the best delegate would be the one who had, like, relative to the size of the country or the influence of the country, the biggest impact on the substance of it's impossible to measure, but that's like what you're trying to go for. And I remember trying to work that impact on the written document at the end of the day into the resolution, because the guys who speak are great, but the guys who end up formatting and writing the resolution, for me as a chair, thank you. Those are the people who make it possible in the end of the day, and they're the ones who have the proper impact. But at the same time, it's so difficult, and I know even in New York, some of the people who were there were not mega happy with the way we as chairs perceive sort of that impact to be on the paper, because whatever happens in those Google Docs.
But to be honest, there's some sort of fail-safe to that. I mean, what I do when I chair and I want to have some more oversight of the committee or something, I just ask my delegates to use funny colors. They just use highlighters to basically highlight what they themselves are writing, so that I know who wrote what. Not only is it good for me, so that I get a sense of, okay, who's actually contributing to the stuff, and the colors don't lie, almost.
Yeah.
Like the delegates will actually be quite honest about who wrote what, and you would quite often find out who talks a lot but doesn't write much.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip.
Honestly, yes, and yeah, then they figure out the colors and so on, and it's also great for the delegates, because then when people start asking, because I had the problem in Rome because I didn't use the funny colors. People would start asking, yes, who wrote this?
And nobody knows!
This nonsense. And nobody knows. and so you hear, are we deleting this thing? No one actually objects or anything, so you might as well go ahead and delete it. But if you do that, well, it was a good idea. What do we do?
Maybe it was just that most shy delegate of them all who wrote the most brilliant operative clause,
and
but is
too
too shy to
it.
claim ownership.
Yeah. No, and that's why you need to empower your delegates.
Yep. How do you do
Absolutely. that? You need to let them know that you're here to make their life easier and to make their debating experience very comfortable. And that's also the job of the chair.
There is
You're a facilitator.
Thought, but I think it's also very far away in terms of like realizing that of building kind of like an editor, a text editor, a resolution editor into MUN Command that could do things like this
within MUN Command.
Within MUN Command, that would be wild. But at the same time, the big problem is, look, I mean, everyone's using Google Docs, fair enough. But so having this small little MUN team building something, the quality of Google Docs and tailor that to MUN, that's going to be a little bit of a stretch.
Can you embed Google Docs? No?
You can embed Google Docs, but then we don't have you could just, I mean, you can sort of embed Google Docs, but you can't have then this like direct grip on the individual operative clauses, for example. Yeah. So I'm thinking there is this tool CK editor, and that might make it possible, but it would be a really big project. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Google Docs is working so well right now, unfortunately, isn't it? To compete with that, it's a big challenge.
The $1 trillion competition.
Literally. That's 100%. although we did pick up the fight, so to say, when it comes to MUN versus Google Forms. So maybe it's worth a shot for MUN Command versus Google Docs. But
to be fair, I mean, making that a comparison is really hard, or trying to pick a fight there, because Google Forms is just a very different product targeted at very different use cases. Whereas being it's like being an application platform. It's like if I don't know, Rihanna was organizing or hosting a concert using Google Docs instead of Eventim or whatever those people use.
To be honest, whoever thought that making motions and points and so on Google Forms was a good idea probably was in a room with a bunch of other people, and they basically spun the wheel just to check on which Google application it would land for them to use the motions. Some people spin the wheel and they end up on Google Forms. Some others go on Google Docs. Some others go on Google Sheets. I'm just waiting for the conference that does motions on Google Slides. That's,
okay, I'm kind of sorry for the delegates, but it would be so funny to actually do that. Like, to just sit there as chairs, they have like a Wheel of Fortune on your desk. And just like, okay, before we take the next round of motions, let me just spin a Wheel of Luck. And here we go, we're going to be doing it in the
Facebook group.
Honestly, for a fun debate, I totally do it. Oh, Facebook group, a Discord chat. Yeah, no, we can go all the way.
Jesus. How many products can you use at the same time for a committee? WhatsApp call, Discord chat,
Zoom call.
Actually, before we wrote the first ever line of code, what we did, because we wanted to kind of understand which software is being used in an MUN context, we did this survey with a bunch of friends where we asked which software they're using, and turns out it's a lot. It's WhatsApp for communication, email for communication, Google Forms maybe for signing up, and then PayPal for paying. And so we looked at this and we thought, man, can't we like skip a few of those? And this is what then eventually became the software we're building, is where you kind of cut down on a few tools and you can focus on MUN, you can focus on MUN Command, and you have two kind of core systems running your show. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting question. I had the other day a call with a conference, and they asked me, isn't it actually a bad thing to have MUN Command, because it distracts delegates, right? They're on the device, they're going to go off and do other stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the reality of today is, if you're not using MUN Command, delegates are certainly using 5 other tools to try and get the benefits that, they would just get through this one single platform where they would be focused on the topic, on the debate. Whereas if you're on Facebook chatting or on WhatsApp chatting or whatever WeChatting you're doing.
Memes are gonna get in the way.
Memes are gonna get in the way at the same time. Your uncle is texting you about the next birthday, and your sister's asking you what present you're gonna get your mum the next year. You're gonna get distracted so much more there than if you're actually on the proper platform.
Especially when you go on an app that's just built for distraction.
Yeah, that's it. Literally. That's a good point. They're built for that.
No, I mean, I share both sentiments. In the first, it's definitely good to have that MUN command space just separated so that you know, okay, this is the work that I put into the committee, and then, you know, you don't have to necessarily focus on the rest. But at the same time, at least for SGMUN and most of the conferences I attend, they do disable the motions put forward by delegates themselves, because the chairs still want to have the control over the proceedings. I prefer it that way as well.
Same, honestly. Like, this is one of the things, and like, it's funny almost now looking back at MUN Command. It's been now near enough 3 years that we started writing the first lines of code, and it's been a good just over 2 years since we had the conference app. And back then, what we dreamt of, you know, were so many different things, and how you imagine a conference is actually going to use it. And like, one of the things that we talked about, Slack, for example, like, or WhatsApp, and we dreamt of, you know, organizers using MUN Command way before the conference already to have their communication with their fellow organizing team on MUN Command.
This is not
and
happening.
have it even being used afterwards between the delegates.
Do they bypass WhatsApp altogether?
That was a dream. Like, we were thinking we could do that. Obviously, the reality of it is that you're using MUN Command chat during the conference with your delegates. You can use it with your chairs as an organizer during the conference. It's great for during the conference, but realistically, it's just not happening really before the conference. And some other things are like the delegates submitting motions themselves. We were like, oh, it's so good. Like, delegates can submit motions. I don't have to type as a chair. I just pick the ones I like. We have a vote, and that. Automatic voting. Perfect. Reality of it is, with the motions, it's a bit more complicated. And I remember even, Jonas, we looked at some of the drafts we made back then, but we had sort of an incoming motions. I'm not even sure what we called it anymore. We had like an incoming motions column where like every delegate could submit their motions. And then as a chair, I would just sort of pick the ones I like into a different column. And then from that column, I would have like a vote in seconds and objections, and maybe take even more. That was obviously not what exactly happened in the end of the day. But
luckily,
it's the same with like other features as well, like voting on motions. Yes, sometimes we do that, but not all people use it. The delegates, letting them submit motions themselves, I didn't do that myself as a chair, because you can more strategically pick, and it takes a little bit of timing out. At the same time, just having those motions there listed in a digital device, well written on every person's device to read it, is such an immense value add, because I remember the days of, you know, reading out motions and a delegate didn't understand, the delegate didn't hear, they didn't pay attention, nobody knows what they're voting on, and that's over now. And it's kind of the same with the roll call, you know. I still do a lot of roll calls when I'm chairing with MUN Command, and I'm sure, there's by hand, essentially taking people off the MUN Command by hand. At the same time, you have the option, when you have to rush it at some point, to do an MUN Command. And I think the documents sort of introduction, sending them, getting approval, that was, I think, one of the things that we underestimated the value of in the beginning when we built it. But now that we've actually used it, we're like, this is like one of the biggest deals we've made. Jonas, I think you wanted to jump in as well.
I mean, I think the very, very, very first use case that we tried to tackle was kind of the roll call. I mean, this idea of like people paying fortunes for flights and hotels to debate for 3 days, and the third day after lunch break, when you really want to get cracking on that event, you just sit there for 30 minutes doing the bloody roll call. Yeah. And I mean, would I say that we have outright 100% solved that? By no means. But if you, as a chair, have, used MUN Command throughout the conference, and then people are familiar with the roll call, the digital roll call, the third day after lunch break, you hit the digital roll call, and even if half the phones are dead, it still means that you only have to do the roll call for half of the people. You can just go through their absence and ask if they're present or present voting, and all the other ones can mark themselves directly present or present voting on the phone. And this saves you 15 minutes. if you calculate like how much people in like for the entire committee invested into that conference, how and then you divide it by the number of minutes that that people are debating. I swear, in that 15 minutes you're saving on a roll call, your cost for MUN Command is already in. Like, you have your money back. It's true.
Easily. Egan, you wanted to jump in as well, didn't you?
Oh yeah. That whole roll call thing. I mean, we did it manually because the kids were not even on the app or anything.
Yeah.
So we did it manually, in Rome at least. And the funniest thing is you have whole delegation sometimes just leaving the community because they have to go. They ask you as a chair whether they can still get their certificates, and you're like, ask the organizers. And the funniest of which is, well, you've done the roll call, but now that you know that these whole bunches of people are just gone, you need to do the roll call anyway before you vote. So tough stuff, really.
It's fun to see though, like what has become of that dream that we had in the beginning, and to see also having used it ourselves, like what other things that people are actually using. Yes, the chat is not being used by organizers before the conference to organize the conference, but I think during the conference, especially after the improvements we've made now, especially now that we've brought to life the real Android and iOS apps, because it's not just running in the browser anymore on your phones and on your tablets. I think it's a tremendous value for everybody, because you don't have to awkwardly ask the girls for their phone numbers just because you want to ask them whether they want to support your resolution, and they don't have to divulge their phone numbers either. That's it. And there's just so much more, but it's wild.
I mean, if you wanted the organizers to communicate on your platform and so on, you'd have to turn MyMUN, or at least the conference organization side of MyMUN, into a workspace. Kind of like Slack or River or anything. But I don't know if that's what the direction you want to take the project in.
Yeah, and even then, I think with MUN Command, the problem right now is like, not the problem, but it's just not really designed for that use case. But it's also like you commit to using MUN Command at some point when you're already halfway through organizing your conference. Typically, that's how it goes. Or you set it up because, right. Even MyMUN, you will likely already have a WhatsApp group by the time you set up MyMUN, because you set up MyMUN whenever you figured out your date. But before you figure out your date, you already had a meeting or two with your club, and then you already have your WhatsApp group. Yeah. Of course, if you could have like maybe a lot of documents in MyMUN as well regarding your conference, it could become more interesting.
Yeah.
But then it has to become an app again. Damn it. Another app.
Talking of which, again, I remember last time we had only the beta for the app. Now it's the actual app. Did you manage to download it already?
Yeah, I have now. It does
fantastic.
Work smoothly.
Sweet.
Yeah. That's relief.
Yeah.
No,
Don't ask why I use MUN Command in my free time, but it does work smoothly.
Oh, who doesn't? Come on.
Such a trend.
We were thinking.
Sometimes I sit on the couch, just open MUN Command, and just scroll about a bit.
You're just bored.
We were thinking about doing a social media series. I was saying we were thinking about doing a social media series of like how MUN nerds use the timers of MUN Command, and then just like they're cooking an egg, and you see them use the timer of MUN Command. Like they're cooking pasta, they're using the timer.
You have Bea on this, right?
Yeah.
You have Bea on this. She has a green lit to the product. Sounds good.
No, but it's actually. Does a timer continue running in MUN Command in the conference app if I switch modes?
I think yes.
See, that's one of those nerd questions that you spend solving in your free time, I guess.
Alex would know. Because then it would be better than an iPhone, because there you can only have one timer at a time.
Yeah.
Whereas we have 5, 6 or something.
Yeah.
Alex, I'll now
to be honest, to be honest, I do go on my MUN when I'm bored sometimes, and just to look at the conferences that are open, and just finding out that there's a conference on the moon crater. That's an interesting discovery.
Is that actually maybe one that we created?
That's one that you created, I think.
Yeah.
Is it the
oh my
Space Moon?
god, there's this TV show, Space Moon. Yeah.
Well, the literally to the moon. Yeah.
It's to the moon. Yeah, and it's probably There's this Apple TV show about people. If the Soviets had won the space race and they set up a space on the a military base on the moon, and they talk about the Sea of Tranquility
mankind or something.
Yeah, for all mankind, and that's why we put the location of our little fake conference as a Sea of Tranquility. Not that anybody cares, but there you go. Egan, you've been to a bunch of conferences. You know the MUN database probably better than we do ourselves because you scroll through it more than in your free time even.
I should realize,
No, but honestly, like if you think back through the conferences or maybe even forward, what is maybe a conference that is just super memorable to you and that is definitely worth the travel for anybody?
St. Gallen, Model United Nations.
Ooh, of course.
I mean, shameless promo as well. But yeah, a city that, to be honest, has no right to be that big in the MUN world. But here we are. We're very much on the MUN Europe map. Successful conference. Every secretariat I've been helping out with or anything has been very diligent or anything. The conference is always academically on a very high level and so on. Mm-hmm. And we do send our best people to other conferences. And the feedback we usually get is, okay, these people, wow. I mean, for Rome, for example, at JCU MUN 2023, we're sending a delegation only of chairs.
Oh, wow.
So sweet. Wow.
So yeah, we do shine through quality, I'd say, and that is being reflected in our conference.
And I
how could
can
it not
say
be quality?
that Egan
It's
is
in
not
Switzerland.
exaggerating. Like the Swiss quality that we also value, it's present in MUNs in Switzerland as well. It seems it's remarkable to see the standards.
It has a certain price. That is true.
It's
to be
Switzerland,
honest, but it is totally worth it. It is totally worth it.
Sweet. Okay, so SGMUN. Okay, that's one conference that you've hosted and organized, and it's obviously close to your heart. Another one that you've maybe traveled to, or that's been sort of outside of your very home base.
To be honest, it's always nice to go back to Tel Aviv, MUN.
Right.
They have some of the nicest socials out there. I mean, it would be hard to have a beach party in St. Gallen, so the next best thing is very much Tel Aviv. In the summer, usually. This time it's in late June, I think.
They pulled it maybe earlier, yeah. It's early this year.
It usually was always in August or something. So bringing the heat, the debates in 35-degree weather.
Nice. They also have Crisis, right?
They have Crisis, and it is very much their prime product. Although every year people are being pulled at the airport because of the directives that they've written, and that they haven't written using a VPN. So the Secret Service is on them.
Yeah, I remember flying to Israel and they checked all my luggage and everything.
Did you seem suspicious?
I was in Zurich, so I was a German. I looked very suspicious, obviously. I was probably wearing a sweater.
No, I'm the blandest person you'll ever meet, so obviously they let me go without anything.
No way! Maybe I'm suspicious then.
I was the least dangerous person you could think of, I guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so Tel Aviv, that's a good recommendation. I've heard really good things about it. I nearly went chairing there once, but ended up not going to because I don't remember, but a long time ago.
And to be honest, although they are not partners, a mention needs to go to Karlsruhe MUN. Yeah, of course. And Mannheim
sort of
MUN. Mannheim MUN is also a very lovely project. They've been reborn. Last conference they had before 2022 was in 2017, and a lot of good care and attention to detail is being brought to that conference, and they're willing to learn from others. That's what I really like about Mannheim. And I mean, Karlsruhe is doing the Karlsruhe thing of basically kind of the same thing, not necessarily the same thing every year, but it works. So why change it?
Yeah.
So
very much family vibes. I feel like that's
family
what Common
vibes
is.
very much.
Like it's not necessarily the highest academics of standards,
and
it's solid.
And even then, it's solid.
Yeah, it's solid, but it just has this unbelievable family vibe that I get from it every year.
Exactly.
And I think it's not just because I have a lot of friends there at this point.
Exactly.
Okay, one final thing, Egan, we want to get your thoughts on. And so at MUN, we talk a lot about our vision of, every student doing at least one MUN in their student career. And because we think it just brings so much value, and I think no matter what your job ends up being, you would, really benefit from just investing those like 2 or 3 days. Now, if we would love to actually see that happen in the world, what do you reckon will have to be done more?
So to understand your question, what we would have to do more going beyond MUN, or
no? What do you think we can, as MUN or in general, within the MUN sort of sphere, do for more people to come into that space and have the opportunity to go to an MUN conference?
I see. I would definitely say it's making them accessible. I think the accessibility is here the prime aspect, especially since the pandemic and so on. We've seen online conferences blow up, and because they are just cheaper, and they were the only possibility for us to have debates back then. But now, I guess we've seen a new trend of, a lot of people, especially from developing countries, don't have the chance to travel to Europe and attend the best conferences. And I'm a prime believer that in order to democratize MUN and just have more diplomats or future diplomats or people gaining interest in that, just making them more accessible. And the way to do that is to very much see online MUN conferences as a more sustainable, a more economically viable, and also more environmentally friendly alternative to MUN conferences. And especially for those who don't have the luxury to go all the way to Europe for a conference, or don't get the visa permissions or anything, just for them to also have this experience.
And maybe it's also just a great training opportunity. Not everybody can go or goes to an MUN conference every month or 2 months. So if you want to prepare for a big conference and you just want to maybe spend a day preparing, this might be a great opportunity. So I'm not sure how many online conferences there are still out there actually.
That's plenty.
I mean, quite a few, but yeah. But
we have 57 on MUN right now. Jesus. Wow, that's a lot actually.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot. I mean,
that's definitely a development since 2020, because people have realized, well, it actually kind of works.
There was no online conferences before, huh?
Yeah.
There we go.
Maybe there was one somewhere in a corner of the world, but
there you go. And
interesting.
Not only because the online debating tools and so on, the online just video conference tools have developed, but also because you guys and also the whole MUN world has also adapted to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we can take some learnings from it and just say, hey, how about we create, or how about as a side project, MUN Command My MUN creates its own online conference, something like that.
You want to share it?
I'd be section.
You'd be section and chair.
Yeah. And delegate.
It's all in one role.
Yeah, but very much this idea of democratization, because it is such a privilege for us to have been able to attend so many conferences, and hopefully still a few more. But a lot of people would like to have that chance and don't necessarily have it, or at least not on a high academic level. And if there's one thing I guess I would like to implement in that kind of MUN legacy that every experienced delegate wants to kind of leave behind in something, it would be very much this kind of kind of idea.
That's really good thought. Thank you. Yeah. All right. That was really, really nice. Thank you so much, Egan. Before we wrap it up, is there any other thought you want to share with us, or with the immense audience that we obviously have with, I don't know how many people you can count on one hand, but
no, just a message out there. I'd say always treat MUN as a hobby, but also as a way for you to just discover the world, discover new cultures, and just interact with people of your age and who share similar interests, but are from different corners of the world. I mean, I developed a passion for learning languages and so on through MUN as well. I didn't know I had that, but just going through socials and so on and mingling with the rest and so on, it's amazing what kind of a personal, kind of wealth you can get from all of that. And those are experiences that build you.
With that being said,
I just
Egan
wanted
has
to
a
say it
Duolingo
out there.
speak in
Sweet.
Ukrainian for 300 days now, Egan?
512.
There we go.
That is impressive.
Yeah, I should probably change language at this point. Probably Swedish or Polish or whatever.
Nice. Egan, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait to see you at the next conference. I hope you have a great weekend.
Thank you very much for having me. And was happy to be on the podcast. Good luck with this series. I've been looking forward to the next episode. And have a good one.
And that was Egan. Now, before we wrap it up completely, it's just still Jonas and myself here, letting you know about some of the insights on what's going on at the MUN Command and MUN fronts. We wanted to let you know that our next conference that we're going to be going to, or some of us are going to, is going to be WorldMUN, Jonas, isn't it?
That's right. Harvard WorldMUN is going to take place in Paris in March, and so we'll be there as a team. And so the very exciting thing for us also is that WorldMUN will use the MUN Command Conference App with all the users, all the delegates. So this is really going to be WorldMUN debating better. So this is super exciting. We'll be there to meet all of you, to get to know you, to feedback as well, but also to just enjoy the beauty of seeing a huge conference benefit from MUN Command.
Right, I can't wait to see, honestly, what you guys share. Unfortunately, I myself won't be there, but I'm very excited to see what it's going to be like to have MUN Command at such a big conference. Something you mentioned before for a second as well is the integration of MUN Command and MUN. I know many people have been asking about what that's going to look like and how soon there will be more of that, obviously. There are varying degrees of that. Jonas, is there anything we can expect in the near future?
Yes. So the very first thing that's going to happen is that we're having a kind of export from MUN integrate to MUN Command feature, which means that there's no longer the need for you to juggle any Excel spreadsheets, but you can just export one and import that without ever opening it directly into MUN Command to set up your app. Now, this is only the very first kind of stepping stone. Building on that further, we're thinking about things like, being able to log into MUN Command with your MUN account, with your conference just being there on MUN Command directly the moment you have it on MUN and things like this. But hold your horses. This is a larger project, and so we're starting with the import-export as kind of like the minimal addition, and then we're building on this gradually to just work on the synergies that are so present.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, obviously there's so much potentially to do, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much on that front. We've also been spending a lot of time, obviously, still improving MUN on a lot of small corners. I know we launched a new front end last year in July, if I recall well. July. Yeah, it was July. And obviously since then there's a lot of small details where we can still polish things a little bit. And we're learning now also a lot of the things about, for example, assignments, how people do those and how we could improve those in the future. One more improvement that I still have on the radar, especially for MUN Command, is to potentially merge the sort of home tab for chairs and delegates together with the motions tab and the roll call, because they are technically mutually exclusive, so they could pretty much live in the same place without you having to switch to motions. as a delegate. Because obviously oftentimes as a chair, you have to let the delegates know, go to the motions tab now in MUN Command and you see the motions, and we want to make sure you don't necessarily have to do that anymore. Aside from that, obviously, if you have any feedback, not just you, Jonas, but anybody else in the world, regarding anything that we have, please share that with us. We're looking forward to tackling all of that and hopefully maybe talking about it in a future podcast.
Sounds good. Alex, one thing I think we should also mention here is the videos you recorded on how to use MyMin, how to set it all up. We have a YouTube series on that. And we've also embedded those in MyMin. So just to, be there present to help you set up your MyMin conference with even more ease than before.
Precisely, yeah. I recorded, I think, 9 videos overall. So wherever you are as an organizer within MyMun, you will find some relatively short videos where I explain to you how to set things up. And there's also actually a video for
delegations,
for head delegates and faculty advisors on how they can manage a delegation, and an overall organizer walkthrough. You find it all again just embedded in our app or on mymun.com, but also on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, where you might be watching this if you are seeing the video version of it. We also, maybe we can also mention what we recorded, I think, over a year ago, originally the original content for the masterclass. The masterclass videos, we have 2 of them out already, the 3rd one coming very soon as well. It's a great beginner's guide for delegates on how to get started within MUN and, have a bit of a deep dive, but still no nonsense, so they can really get the best tips and how you can get started. So if you organize a conference or if you have a club and you just want to have people have some introductory, content that is really concise and have some, there's even some little exercises, you can share that with them or check it out for yourself if you're a beginner delegate. You never know. All right, Jonas, I think that's plenty. I think together we're excited
to debate. Better. The lag is terrible. Time to record one in person.
All right, anyway. It is indeed. See you at the next podcast and have a good one.
Thanks so much, Alex.